Hello everyone and welcome to another session of AP Human Geography with Mr. Elrod. Today we're going to continue on in Unit 6, Industrial and Economic Development. So in our previous videos we were looking at two sets of theories and ideas on why the development gap exists and why we have the gap between some more and less developed countries. So we looked at the idea of the core periphery model, and so this economic relationship between countries. We looked at Rostow's model of modernization, this idea that countries progress through stages. So today what we're going to look at are some varying points of view on what countries can do in order to reduce the development gap. So there are two approaches that we're going to look at. One's called the self-sufficiency approach, the other is called the international trade approach. The self-sufficiency approach would run more along the lines of a structuralist, whereas the international trade approach would run more along the lines of a liberal economic philosophy for development. So the first one we'll look at is what's called the self-sufficiency approach. And so this is pretty much what it sounds like. So basically the idea is that countries are going to close themselves off for the most part from other countries and try to provide all the things that it needs for its own country, and provide the things that it needs on its own. So kind of put itself in a position where it does not rely on trade, does not rely on capital from other countries. So in this particular system, what you have is a situation where the government is going to try and create a system where investments are evenly distributed among all economic sectors, so that no one sector is favored over the other, so that no one job or set of jobs is favored over the other. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're trying to keep industries from going out of business, so that you can keep jobs and maintain jobs. And so the idea there is this economic philosophy of creating this kind of closed system. The main focus on isn't necessarily on growth and wealth production and doing really the most amount of good for the most amount of people, but it's more of an idea of trying to reduce levels of poverty by making sure that you are protecting people's jobs from outside corporations and outside investments and things along those lines. Now what we have in this particular situation is what we call a closed economic state. Now what we mean by closed economic state is that the state for the most part is going to be closed to outside investors. It's going to be closed to foreign trade. Now there might be some situations where there's a little bit of trade, or it's open to some trade from foreign countries or companies, but in this closed economic state, a lot of times the barriers to trade are so high that even if some of the foreign goods get in, they're going to be traded very little. And so in this system we have what's called a protectionistic system. And so basically what's going on is the government is using its power for taxation and for creating trade barriers to protect specific industries in its country. And again, the protection there, for the most part, is to try and protect the jobs of the individuals who are part of that particular industry. Back in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of outsourcing that was going on in the United States, especially in the textile industry, and we saw a lot of information technology in terms of like call centers and things like that. Those jobs got outsourced to other countries, and so of course with that, that meant that the United States in that instance was not practicing protectionistic policies by keeping those companies in the country. So with protectionism, again, that means you're going to typically have limited imports into your country because you don't want your domestic companies and manufacturers and producers to be competing with foreign producers, because a lot of times the foreign products, and a lot of times in these types of situations, the foreign products, not only are they cheaper, a lot of times they're of better quality, and that's why the domestic producers feel threatened by the foreign producers, and they're going to place high tariffs on goods that are coming into the country. There are several instances where this was used. It was used in China, it was used in India, and it was used in certain parts of Africa. And for the most part, this closed economic states, this idea of self-sufficiency didn't work very well And a lot of it had to do with the fact that because you have so much government involvement in corporations and companies, there's a lot of corruption that would go on, colluding between government officials and company owners, owners. It also promotes inefficiency because if you're protecting companies from foreigners and foreign companies that are going to compete with them in the marketplace, then really that industry has no incentive to try and improve not only the quality of its product, but a lot of times the quality of its processes. So it really has no need to do that, and so it promotes a system of inefficiency. One of the great examples that's used is in India's situation with its textile manufacturing. India went to great lengths to protect its textile manufacturers, even to the extent that even while most of the world was using power looms and was using machine-driven looms, in India you still had people who were using hand-cranked hand looms and were using some of the older, more traditional methods because they were being protected by the Indian government. Another system or another concept to try and reduce the development gap is through what's called the international trade approach. This would be considered more of a liberal economic theory. So basically the idea is you want to open up a country through the international trade approach. You want to open up a country to foreign nations and trade with foreign nations and trade with foreign companies and investments from foreign companies to try and improve production, to try and improve the quality of the work that those people are doing. And so the idea there is that countries will identify areas where they can be successful in competing with other countries, and so therefore the country will identify these areas where they can be successful. They will invest, their companies in their country invest, other companies from other countries will invest, and then they'll begin to compete against the rest of the world. And in this case, what we typically get, or the idea is that through this competition, through this free market competition, not only do you get the best products, but you get the best products at the best prices because of this open competition. And unlike the self-sufficiency approach where corporations and industries are protected, companies in this approach are much more inclined and almost forced to innovate and produce better products, cheaper products, and they're forced to make products more efficiently. Companies and countries will look for what's called a comparative advantage, and basically all a comparative advantage means is that a company or country is looking for a product that they can make that is going to not only be better but also be cheaper. And again, this is what's going to give them success in the international market. And so the whole concept, the whole idea behind the international trade approach is that if you open up markets and if you open up trade, this is going to create wealth everywhere because every country and every company is going to be investing in what they believe is going to work and is going to make them successful, and then this is going to generate jobs and wealth and all these other kinds of things. Now, I think it's important to note that no one country operates under the complete concept of free market capitalism. In every country, you have government restrictions, government impositions on trade, whether it's through tariffs or whether it's keeping their currency artificially cheap. There are a lot of different things that go on, and so I think it's important to make that note. But under the international trade approach, the idea would be that you have a trade situation where you have free markets, free trade going on between countries. Well, that's all the time we have for today, except for a quiz ferret. Quiz ferret, our furry little friend, has popped his head out of the ground. He has a question for us today, and I believe this question is going to go back to our previous video, so hopefully you have your notes from Rostow's model. So our question today is, what stage of Rostow's model would a semi-periphery country be in? So you got to take those ideas of Rostow's model, apply it to the core periphery concept, and see what you can come up with. So maybe pause the video, take a sec, see what you think. The answer is stage 3 or stage 4. Really depending on which country you looked at, how you argued it, you could probably see these countries in the latter stages of stage 3, early stages of stage 4 in Rostow's model of modernization. So I hope you found that to be helpful. If you have any questions, leave those in the comment box below, and I hope to see you next time.